It's been the worst time of my life, Joe. If somebody accused me of raping them or hurting them, I have a 22-year-old daughter. I would never hurt anyone.
He played killers, hustlers, fathers, and cops in over 100 movies. But one accusation that never even made it to a criminal charge nearly ended his career anyway. This is the story of Clifton Powell, and why in Hollywood being cleared isn't the same as being free. Clifton Powell is one of those faces you have seen 100 times even if you never learned his name. For more than 3 decades, he has shown up in film after film, quietly becoming one of the most dependable character actors in the business. His breakout came in 1993 with Menace to Society, a raw, unflinching look at street life that put his name on the map. Soon after, he became a fixture of the Friday franchise, playing Pinky, a role that turned him into a fan favorite for his comic timing as much as his intensity. Powell had a rare gift. He could terrify an audience in one film and make them laugh in the next, and very few actors of his generation could move between those registers so convincingly. By 2004, his reputation had grown even further. He appeared in Ray, the acclaimed biopic starring Jamie Foxx, playing Jeff Brown, the loyal road manager who stood beside Ray Charles through the highs and lows of his career. The performance earned Powell an NAACP Image Award nomination, placing him in the same conversation as some of the most respected names in the industry. Along the way, he built a resume that included Dead Presidents, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, Rush Hour, and Next Friday, racking up more than 100 credits across film and television. He became the actor directors called when they needed someone who could make a scene feel real, whether that meant a villain, a father figure, a hustler, or a cop. What made Powell stand out wasn't just how much work he did, it was how far his range stretched. He could deliver a menacing glare in one scene and a perfectly timed joke in the next, then turn around and ground an emotional moment with quiet restraint. That versatility earned him respect from directors and casting agents who trusted him to elevate any role he was given. But behind that steady professional success, Powell's personal life was far messier. And in 2011, that mess became public in the worst possible way. That year, a woman using the pseudonym Kiani Myers came forward with an allegation against Powell stemming from encounter in a New Orleans hotel room. According to her account, she and Powell had known each other for roughly 2 years through her job as a cocktail waitress at a local casino. She alleged that what began as consensual quickly turned into something she did not agree to, and that when she asked him to stop, he did not. She reported the incident to police in 2011, but investigators closed the case for lack of evidence, and Powell was never arrested and never criminally charged. That should have been the end of it. It was not. In 2012, Myers filed a civil lawsuit against Powell in federal court, seeking damages in excess of $75,000. Powell, through his representative, denied the accusations completely, calling them false and vowing to fight the case. He would later say publicly that the situation was about money, not truth, and that he had never hurt anyone and had never been arrested in his life. Here is where the story gets complicated, and where a lot of the internet coverage over the years has gotten it wrong. Powell's original legal team did not respond properly to the lawsuit, and as a result, a default judgment was entered against him for $150,000 in damages plus medical expenses. For a while, that judgment stood on the books, but Powell hired new representation and fought to have it overturned. His new lawyers argued, and a judge eventually agreed, that Powell had never been properly served with the lawsuit in the first place. There were also inconsistencies in how the case had been handled, including confusion over who had actually accepted the legal paperwork on Powell's behalf. In a ruling that made headlines in entertainment law circles, Judge Sarah Vance vacated the default judgment entirely, and a police detective who had reinvestigated the claims stated that they were unfounded. Powell's own countersuit for defamation and emotional distress was later dismissed as well, though for a technical reason rather than a decision on the merits. The court found he had waited too long to file it under Louisiana's 1-year statute of limitations. So the final legal outcome was this: no criminal charges were ever filed. The civil judgment against him was thrown out, and the case was closed. By any fair reading of the record, Clifton Powell was cleared, not sentenced. But clearing your name in a courtroom and clearing your name in the public eye are two very different things, especially in an industry as image-conscious as Hollywood. The moment the allegation became public, outlets picked it up with blunt, damning headlines that left little room for nuance. For an actor who had spent decades building trust with audiences and casting directors, the reputational damage arrived instantly, long before any court had weighed in. Powell has said in interviews that roles he had already been cast in started disappearing. Producers grew hesitant to work with him. He has recalled one project where he expected to appear across 7 or 8 episodes, only to see his part quietly written out after just 2, with no real explanation given. He has also spoken about how deeply that period affected him personally, describing it as one of the most painful stretches of his life. As a father, he said the accusations cut in a way that went beyond his career, because he had to think about how his own children might one day encounter those headlines. He maintained his innocence throughout, but he could not shield his family from whispers and assumptions that followed them in public. In an industry where perception often moves faster than fact, Powell found himself dealing with consequences that no acquittal or dismissal could fully undo. Years of momentum in his career were lost to a case that ultimately went nowhere legally. And that is the real, uncomfortable lesson in his story. An accusation alone, even one that collapses under scrutiny, can carry a cost that outlasts the legal process itself. Powell's career has also been shaped by something less sudden, but just as damaging: the systemic bias that has followed darker-skinned black actors throughout Hollywood's history. He has spoken candidly about being told outright by producers and executives that he was, in his words, too dark for certain roles. He has recalled being passed over for parts that call for warmth or vulnerability, even while being praised for his ability to play intimidating or villainous characters. That contradiction limited the kinds of roles he was offered for years, keeping him locked into certain archetypes, while roles requiring sympathy or romantic appeal often went to lighter-skinned actors instead. It is a pattern many performers of his generation have described, one dressed up in industry language like marketability or target demographic, but rooted in old and stubborn biases about who audiences are supposed to relate to. Despite that, Powell has been outspoken about solidarity within the black entertainment community. He once publicly pushed back against a well-known director for criticizing another black actor in the mainstream press, saying he did not respect anyone, including people in his own family, who would tear down a fellow black performer trying to succeed in a difficult industry. For Powell, that kind of infighting only reinforced the very barriers black actors were already fighting against. Powell's personal foundation was shaped early by hardship. He grew up in southeast Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood where poverty and crime shaped the lives of many young men around him. His mother died when he was only 4 years old, leaving him in the care of a father who struggled with alcoholism and could not always provide the stability a child needs. Powell has described those years as a constant effort to stay out of trouble, relying on mentors and family members who stepped in when they could. That early instability seemed to echo into his adult life. He married Kimberly Powell, and for a time, the couple built what looked like a stable family life. But the demands of a Hollywood career, constant travel, long hours, and the pressures that come with fame put real strain on the marriage, and it eventually ended in divorce. Powell has been open about the financial toll that divorce took, saying he lost around $5 million in the process, a significant blow at a stage in life when he might otherwise have been thinking about retirement. He has also been unusually honest about his own shortcomings during that period. He has admitted that his devotion to work, along with the temptations that come with fame, kept him away from his children more than he should have been. He has said plainly that he was not there for his kids the way he should have been, acknowledging that providing financially is not the same as being present. He once reflected that being away from home half the time might have been manageable, but being away 70% of the time was simply too much, an admission that came, in his words, later than it should have. Powell has also spoken about a period of heavy gambling, admitting to losing between $30,000 and $50,000 a year at casinos, money that added to the financial strain already caused by his divorce. He has talked about being surrounded during that time by people drawn to his money and status rather than to him as a person, a common trap for those who reach a certain level of fame without the support system to match it. Looking back, he has described that stretch of his life as a spiral, one where decisions that felt exciting in the moment only created bigger problems down the road. What makes Powell's story worth telling isn't a scandal with a tidy ending. It's the gap between two very different realities. On screen, audiences saw a commanding, versatile actor who could do it all. Off-screen, he was navigating divorce, financial loss, and an allegation that legal records show was never proven, yet still shaped how the industry treated him for years. His story is a reminder that in Hollywood, an accusation can function like a verdict long before any court gets involved, and that being legally cleared doesn't always undo the damage that came before it. Clifton Powell is still working today, still showing up in the kind of roles that made him a familiar face for 3 decades. His career survived, but it did not survive untouched. And that more than any single headline is the real story behind the man so many people recognize, but few actually know. Thanks for watching. If you found this story worth your time, consider liking and subscribing for more deep dives into the real stories behind familiar faces.